Welcome back, warriors. We are so excited to jump into today's topic. What are we talking about today, Abby?
Oh my goodness. We are talking about the big scary word, vulnerability.
It must be said in a deep voice. Vulnerability.
Vulnerable. We're diving into practicing vulnerability and sharing what we need with the important people in our lives. And we're actually talking about, I don't think I've told you this, but one of my favorite topics aside from anxiety and nervous systems and anxious attachment is communication.
Somatic holds.
Somatic holds. So I love podcasting, my favorite things. But one of my favorite things also is communication and the ability to know how to communicate what you need to the people that you need to communicate to, and different ways that we've communicated with friends, family, loved ones, and different ways that we've asked for or told people how we need support around our anxiety.
Yeah, I love this topic so much because I feel like communication is the kind of thing that we often associate it with talking to other people, right? And that is kind of what we're going to be focusing on, verbalizing our needs and asking for support and encouragement or whatever it is we're looking for in the moment surrounding our anxiety or our experience, but also with the ways in which we communicate to ourselves and how that contributes, right? Communication is such a broad subject that I think could be covered in many episodes, and maybe it will be.
Yeah.
But we all communicate so differently. And I think that's why it's such a tricky topic, especially when you are trying to ask for support from loved ones or colleagues or whoever, because we all communicate differently. And and how we listen, right, which is part of our communication. We hear each other very, very differently. And actually, it made me think of when we were interviewing with Raina, and we asked her what it meant to her to be an anxiety warrior, right? Just thinking about language and how she approached the phrase so differently than the way you and I do. And
right. Yeah, we hear things through the lens of our own experiences. So unless we continue to ask each other questions to get clarity, to understand
more communication,
like sometimes it's really hard for people to feel seen and heard because communication is a skill that we're not often taught how to listen and how to speak.
Right. Or it's taught in presentation form, right?
Yep.
It's like, here's how to perform verbally or non-verbally, right? It's still a performance. Here's how to emote or to best express and best practice it. It's just like, wow, well, that's not the only thing we know that goes into being effective communicators.
Yeah, right. That's right, because in that emoting and in that expressing and in that, it is performance based, and it's not like being aware of, hey, how am I doing? What are my needs? What is happening for me? And, what is some action that I need to take, or what is some support that I need, right? In that public speaking, we are in a sense performing for others. But when we're knowing how to talk to someone about what we need, we first need to have an awareness of how we're actually doing and what do we actually need before we can ask someone for support.
Right. And in focusing on the vulnerability piece, right? So it's vulnerable to say, get up on a stage and perform, if you're an actor or doing improv or something like that. But it's even more vulnerable sometimes to have a one-to-one with a loved one, especially if maybe what you need to communicate might be a struggle for that person to hear.
Right.
Or if you're just not sure how what you say is going to be received or perceived by another person.
Yeah.
So, Abby, I cannot wait for you to kick us off this week with a story for us.
Yeah. So, as we were talking about this, we were thinking about why didn't we communicate? Right. And I think that's an important part is, there was a time when I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator now, but I definitely did not feel that way for a lot of my life. And so I was really thinking about why were there times where I wasn't communicating, and some of it was sometimes I didn't know I needed support. Sometimes I didn't know I needed help. Sometimes I didn't know I was having anxiety. And so I didn't know that I could ask for help. There was like the lack of awareness. But another reason that I didn't communicate for a lot of, my life was because I was afraid of looking like there was something wrong with me. I was afraid of coming off as needy. I was afraid of communicating what I needed and being rejected. And I know you can relate to this one because, we've talked about this before, but I was afraid of coming off as too much. Oh, she needs too much. And so a lot of it, I just kept bottled inside because I wanted to pretend everything was okay. I wanted to pretend that I had it all together. But that definitely didn't work out well for me. I didn't, I didn't feel like I was ever really myself, right? I felt like I was performing for other people a lot, people pleasing, right?
Bringing it all back.
Right? It's like all these one-sided things. Let me give and give and give, but no, I'm fine. I got everything together, right? And so, what really, changed for me, and I will say one thing is like what my go-tos were when I was needing something, but I wouldn't communicate it, is that like I would go in my room and lay in my bed and just suffer. Like that is one of the things that like was a very strong pattern. Even now, sometimes when I'm having big anxious feelings, my pattern is to be alone and like just deal with it until it's over so that I can look happy for others, right? So I can look fine for others. And this goes back to what we were talking about in that podcast with Raina. Like as kids, we're told not all feelings are valid. And if we, we're an inconvenience for unpleasant emotions and feelings. And so, a lot of it was just being alone in agony, or getting easily annoyed at people when I didn't necessarily communicate what I needed, but I communicated I was having a hard time, and they would say stuff like, get over it. And so then,
So helpful. What a helpful statement.
Yeah, you're fine. Don't let it bother you.
Calm down.
Let it go.
So triggering.
Yeah, right. And so that would shut me down too because I felt so misunderstood, right? So what really happened for me to learn to take a different approach for communicating was it started when I was like 20. Well, it started in my like mid 20s when I first started to learn about mindfulness, and I was taking a mindfulness based stress reduction course because that started to get me to understand the sensations of my body. It started to get me to understand the needs of being a human being, and like normalize some parts of being human. But when I was 28, I did a workshop at the Omega Institute called the Empowerment Workshop. And this is like one of the moments in my life that like just it changed my life. Like, there's all these like little bits and pieces along the way, but the Empowerment Workshop was the first time where I walked away as a different person. And what happens in there is, you're basically exploring the narrative you have in your life around different areas of your life, and you're questioning it and you're seeing what other narrative you might want to take. And for me, what happened was, I was talking to one of the facilitators and I was sharing with them my hopes and dreams. And they were like, well, why aren't you going after that? And I was like, because I'm not good enough. But like, I just said it so matter of fact, like it was just a fact for me, right? I never even questioned that narrative. I never even thought there was another truth. And the facilitator, David Gershon, I love you. He asked me, he said, who told you that? And I was like, what? And so that opened my eyes to examining my narrative, right? But then the other piece that happened, well, there's two pieces that happened in the workshop. One was people were vulnerable with each other, and what I learned was that everyone is having the same type of suffering, right? Everyone shares the I'm not good enough feeling in some way or another. And everyone shares the what is wrong with me. And everyone shares wanting to be seen and be heard. And so I started to realize, like, oh, I'm not alone in this. But then
Right.
the other thing that happened in that workshop was, David and his wife, Gail, shared their story about vulnerability and how when they first started dating, Gail was, like telling him right up front in the first like few months of dating, like, hey, I'm surprised that we're dating. Like, I feel I'm not good enough in this relationship. Like, I don't know why you're dating me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try that. and so, and so when I was with my last partner, um early on in our dating, when I would notice the feelings of I'm not good enough come up, for me it was like, okay, if he can't accept this part of me, he can't accept me, right? And so
Mm.
I said to him, I was like, I'm noticing I feel like I'm not good enough and I'm confused in our relationship and everything. And he reassured me, and I was like, oh, I can be me around people. And so that gave me the like confidence to continue to pay attention to the narrative in my mind, to pay attention to the needs that I'm having. Like, I need reassurance, I need to feel like, we're on the same page. And so I would keep practicing with him. And as ultimately it didn't work out with him, even though he's a lovely person. Um, but I had that foundation so that when I started dating Dan, I was able to share like right off the bat, like, hey, communication's important to me. Um, if I text you, texting back in a reasonable amount of time is important to me. Otherwise, my anxiety gets really, overwhelming. Hey, just like having conversations about how we're doing in our relationship is important to me. And because I had had that foundation with the previous partner, I was able to say it confidently with Dan. And so we've really built this relationship around communication and how we're feeling and what we need and how we can support each other. Um, and so it's even shifted into like what I was saying before about I used to, when I would feel anxious and overwhelmed, I would hide it. And I remember like one of the first times I was feeling like anxious and uncomfortable, and I can't remember the reason why. And Dan was just sitting next to me, and he didn't try to fix it and he didn't try to change it. And he just kind of like was doing his own thing, but like was totally fine being with me in like a mood or a funk or whatever I was. And it was like the first time where it was like I felt totally okay being myself. Like, I'm
Mm.
a person, my emotions change. Some of them are unpleasant. Sometimes I'm moody. I didn't have to hide any part of me with him. Like, it was okay that I was moody. It was okay that I was having a different experience than him. We didn't have to change it. But also, I knew if I needed something from him, I could ask him. And I wasn't going to come off as needy. I was just going to come off as a human being.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I so deeply resonate with every like oh, well, relationships aside and the nature of them, but just the what you were saying about afraid of being too, and then
Yeah.
just add the word on after it, too much, too needy, too this, too clingy, too that,
Hmm.
and just this feeling of not being good enough or enough. And
Yeah.
the that question, it sounds like you received at that Omega empowerment workshop, was such a, it seems a pivotal moment for you, which it's like,
Mhm.
who told you that?
Yeah.
Such a simple question, right? It's like, I guess I told me that, right? Because then it makes you really be reflective on like, I don't know, nobody actually did tell me that. That is my
Yeah.
inner narrative. And what an amazing gift that sounds like it was.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it changed your life, and everything since then has been able to be put into a different framework and perspective
Right.
because of that.
Right.
And you can, I think, when we're practice vulnerability too, what I heard you saying a little bit is that when you see other people practice vulnerability, right, and communicate that and share their stories, it can sometimes not just be eye-opening that it's okay to discuss this kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and that the feelings that you're going through are completely human and normal and valid,
Yeah.
but that it might be really powerful to be as expressive and to tell the people that you love that you hope or know that love you back are going to be able to give you that reassurance. And it sounds like your
Right.
ex was able to give you that reassurance and you were
Yeah.
like, oh, that's all I needed to do, right? It was really quick and simple. And now I've realized it's about myself, that I can communicate this kind of stuff and
Right.
ask for exactly what I need,
Right.
which is
Right.
amazing. And so I was going to ask, and I'm still going to ask, when and how has your vulnerability overall paid off? I
Yeah.
mean, you kind of said this a little bit in like that story you just told about when you were sitting next to Dan and you were in a mood and he just allowed you to be. But
Yeah.
like if you could think more generally to your life since that empowerment workshop,
Yeah.
maybe like when and how in big ways or little ways
Yeah.
does vulnerability really pay off in your life?
So I will say this, like when I first learned about vulnerability, and it was before Brene Brown, we know I love her, but I had actually learned about it right before I had learned about her.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I was like, oh my God, it's so freeing to be vulnerable. Let me just spread my vulnerability everywhere. Right. And what I just want to say is that like that didn't work, right? Vulnerability
Right.
is something that is earned. It is not something that like you, you meet someone on the train and they get to hear your whole life story. They don't earn that, they don't deserve that, right? And so I also had to learn that piece about vulnerability too. But how has my life changed? I mean, the reality is it's two parts. It's one is when I'm vulnerable, people are also vulnerable with me.
Hmm.
And I get to have these more meaningful, deeper connections with other humans where none of us are pretending we have it all together. We are accepting our humanity and sharing that piece with each other. And it just feels like more fulfilling, meaningful relationships in general. Um, but the vulnerability piece also really paid off, just in general, where like I'm okay being myself, right? Like just being myself is an act of vulnerability. Like just showing
Mm.
up as however I am during that whatever I'm doing used to feel too scary. It was too scary to do that. I was constantly afraid of being rejected or not being smart enough, good enough, all of the enoughs, right? And
Hmm.
and what's really shifted is this deep understanding that all humans long to belong. All humans have these longings within us. We all share a lot of deep truths. And if I can just shed a little bit of light on that and embrace the humanity, like at least I feel better as a person, right? So it just gave me
Yeah.
like more of a sense of inner peace and more of a sense of like authenticity or integrity in who I am.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Authenticity. That's what everybody, I mean, well, both of us we have different feelings towards like say Instagram. Let's use that as a blanket example, right?
Mhm.
But what I've come to learn is that at the end it seems that more people are interested in it when they feel like they're connecting with a real
Yeah.
person,
Yes.
and businesses and people have more people who are on the train with them, taking the journey and the ride with them when they are their true messy authentic selves
Yeah.
more often,
Yeah.
because we all seek not just connection but connection to real people who are
Right.
behaving real.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It
And I
gives
just want to
us
say,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no,
Mhm.
I was just going to say that what, again, just going back to the reassurance piece, like bringing it into verbal communication. I think that sometimes we get trapped in this idea of like reassurance is a bad thing, or
Yeah.
like we should be able to have all the security in the world by ourselves, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's no, not completely untrue. Okay, you want to be able to have some of that security come from a deep place within. That's something
Yeah.
to aspire to, but how are we going to get there? By,
Right.
by being assured by our caregivers, our loved ones, the people that claim to love us and want to be in our lives.
Right.
And so asking for that, right, should be a small ask.
Yeah. 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 There's two things that I really like in that. And one is, when you just said this around Instagram and the connection, like I think the more authentic and real we can show up even on these platforms, it gives permission for other people to feel
Right.
like they can show up like themselves in Instagram and in life.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part, right, is like sometimes we have to pause and be like, okay, what do I need? I need reassurance. Okay, well, can I give that to myself? Right? Can I reassure myself that my plan, my thing, whatever I'm needing, right? Like, I got this. Or, is this like in regards to someone else? And I need to just like make sure I'm on the same page as them with the reassurance. Like, I love the duality because yes, we don't want to get everything from someone else because that's what us anxious attachments do. We want everyone to but what we really want is being able to find that balance of how can we know we're enough and also communicate when we need that support. How can we
Right.
know, reassure ourselves we got this, and then when is it the right time to ask for support in that too. So I love that. So what's your vulnerability story? What's your story around communication?
Yeah. Well, going back to how you had started was just thinking about reasons why I didn't communicate some of my needs
Yeah.
growing up and as a young adult, and even as an adult, even with a mindfulness practice. At first it was because I didn't know I had anxiety,
Mhm.
similar to what you had said. And then also what I really resonated with in your story is true for me, which is I always wanted to have an appearance of being and then fill in the blank.
Yeah.
The appearance of being strong, the appearance of being with it, the appearance of being smart, the
Mm.
appearance of being together outwardly,
Yeah.
especially in work situations, or when my emotions would be running really, really high with the people around me, whether it be coworkers, family, or friends. I felt like I should or had to step into a role that no one asked of me. This is a constant theme for me,
Yeah.
which was to be moderator, be leader, be listener, or at least try to remain grounded, even if I didn't feel grounded.
Yeah.
Um, and just a quick backstory on this one instance that really stood out to me when I was thinking about this topic in a time when I should have communicated something to people and I didn't. And the
Hmm.
result was less than good. I was a teacher for a long time and it was on towards the end of the school year one year. And, I had become a leader in the school
Mhm.
pretty early on. It was only my second year teaching there. And in my second year teaching, it was a Head Start. And the government comes in every few years to assess your Head Start program. It's a government funded program. And so, and they come in for the whole week.
Mhm.
And so they came in, everything went so well, in fact, that I was recognized by the state,
Wow.
me and my teaching assistant for exemplary teaching. And it was a wonderful honor, but at the same time, it brought me a lot of anxiety because now
Yeah.
I'm being singled out in a way, right? And now I have sort of my peers, I could feel some of them looking at me with a little bit of disdain, or I
Mhm.
don't know. And maybe I'm projecting some of that, even now reflecting. It's not like I ever had a conversation with my former coworkers from years back about any of this, but who knows? Anyway, it was at the end of that year, which was a wonderful school year. We were preparing the kids for graduation. And it was the kind of thing where all the kids were graduating together. All the classes were having one huge ceremony. The mayor would come, and it was a whole big to do. And for whatever reason, nobody asked me to lead the charge on trying to get everyone organized with what time we were going to get together for rehearsal, who was going to lead the rehearsal, who was going to, basically corral 70 kids or more than that actually to be able to like get it together to practice for
Yeah.
graduation. And they're all between 3 and 5 years old, or no, they were graduating. So they were 4 and 5 years old. So little, right? They needed a lot
Yes.
of direction and attention, and you had to be engaging and captivating. And it was exhausting, and it was the end of a school year. And so every day over the course of these couple of weeks, I was the one that was leading the charge. Nobody asked me to, but I just did it. I took on the
Yeah.
role one day and then it became my role.
Oh,
And none of the other teachers or assistants asked me if I wanted that role every single day of the week.
yeah.
It was fine the first few days, but then, I was starting to lose my voice. There was a lot of other factors going on, just regular
Mhm.
life experience. And anyway, it was a particularly rough day. And I just decided I'm not leading graduation today. But I didn't tell anybody I wasn't leading
Whoops.
graduation. And so we all showed up at the agreed upon time and the agreed upon location. And I just went with my kids and I pushed them along to the stage, to the practice area. And then I sat down and I just crossed my arms and didn't say anything. And there was a good awkward like couple minutes that went
Mhm.
by where like everyone just kind of wasn't sure what was
Yeah.
going on. They weren't sure if I wasn't ready or if nobody asked me if I needed support
Mhm.
either, right?
Yeah.
Or anything. And so I just sat down and decided I'm done. I've had it today. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say a word to these people. Even though I had put the burden on myself, I also didn't ask for support. Nobody asked me if I needed support, which maybe they were worried about asking me that. Maybe they thought I just needed a moment. But I literally said no words for like 2 minutes. And it was, I mean, the kids were talking,
Right.
everyone was, there were side conversations, but you could tell some of the other teachers were kind of just like, okay, like it took them a couple, okay, I guess this isn't happening. And so they weren't sure what to do. And I just sat back and said, figure it out. This isn't my
Yeah.
problem. I'm not, getting paid extras to lead graduation rehearsal. Um, and thinking back on this story, there were just so many things that I did quote unquote wrong, right? Like
Mhm.
I didn't communicate my needs to any of
Yes.
my coworkers when it might have just been as simple as like go up to one person and say, I'm exhausted today. I need somebody else to take
Right.
charge,
Yeah.
right? It probably would have been that. And then that would have been that. There were so many other people
Yeah.
would have been like, oh, okay. Like I'm sure it would have been completely fine. But in my mind, in my body, I was angry. And I sat there
Yes.
angry that that I was once again being expected to lead,
Yeah.
and B, that nobody questioned it. Nobody
Right.
was like, something's wrong. Maybe they could see that I was angry. I'm sure it was clear on my
Yeah.
face but it wasn't as if anyone like, sought out any curiosity like, are you okay, what's going on, are you not
Mhm.
up for leading today? So it was a complete another breakdown of communication
Wow.
overall. And for some reason, just thinking about communicating our needs, this story really just came to the forefront
Yes.
because I was in a place of that year, especially after being recognized, that I didn't want to appear vulnerable. I didn't want to appear weak. I
Mhm.
didn't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just didn't. I chose defiance and passive aggression and
Mhm.
microaggression and anger. And look, I'm not trying to beat myself up about it. I'm recalling a very real and honest experience that I
Yeah.
had. But at the same time, it's like, whoa, that was a lot of missed opportunities for myself to
Right.
be vulnerable. But clearly I wasn't ready for it at that time.
You know,
um,
can
yeah, go
I
ahead.
so I just wonder because I mean I can relate to this and again like I said before like we see things through the lens of our experience, right? So I've tantrum before, like I've done that. We're passive aggressive, like screw you all. But it also like sounds like did you feel unappreciated?
150%.
Yeah, like
So
you
unappreciated.
filled in a huge role. No
Yeah.
one said thank you. You're doing it,
Nope.
you're overextending yourself, and there's like no even like acknowledgement of what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. And even after that, like I wound up having conversations with a couple of the teachers after that,
Mhm.
but it was a lot of like, I mean, and it was another reflection of everyone's communication styles were so different and no one was on the same page with what the right next thing to do was. Right. And so a couple of the women were probably like, in their own heads, I think it's a bad idea for me to go communicate with this person right now because it seems like
Mhm.
they're going through something,
Right.
right? And it maybe would have been too vulnerable for them to open themselves up in that way to come over and try to figure out what was going on with me or
Right.
if I needed support. And I definitely felt underappreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I just in kindness to myself, but also in honest reflection, uh, I definitely put a lot of that stuff, that leadership stuff was on me,
Right.
right? It was me saying, you're the leader. Everyone's
Yeah.
looking to you to lead, so you better do it and shut up
Right.
about it.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, but I had hit that wall even
Yeah.
as a fully grown adult with a practice. I mean, I hadn't been practicing not very well that day, not that week. It was a very stressful couple of weeks, but yeah, it makes me smile thinking back on it now, just because things have changed so much for me,
Yeah.
even in tough situations. So, a lot of the ways that I notice myself now, and when I'm ready to practice being vulnerable in any situation with any person, is by first saying to myself, you do not have to be everything to everyone all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Just offering myself that reminder that, yes, you're a naturally, maybe seemingly an extroverted person, even though I feel I'm more of an introverted
Mm-hmm.
extrovert, uh, and a socially anxious person, but you don't have to lead and take charge of every situation
Right.
all the time. In fact, by not doing so, you're offering other people the opportunity to do so.
Yes.
So that's like step one, usually.
Yeah.
And practicing mindfulness regularly really made a difference for me too, because it gave me this set of tools to operate with so I could function optimally as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to wear the many hats that teachers and people have to wear when they're out there in the world, doing anything.
Yeah.
And it was just like this, in hindsight, it feels really simple, right? Like learning these tools, it's like a light bulb. Oh, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Mhm.
I'm a part of the situation that it doesn't have to be like this.
Right.
And it gave me this like help me find like renewed strength in my own inner power and resilience, my mindfulness
Mhm.
practice. And it came with a sense of peace. That
Yeah.
even when I'm angry or I'm having those moments where like I'm about to tantrum or I'm about to disassociate or be passive aggressive or whatever, I know that I still have this bucket of resources that I can turn to.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
usually typically will work out and be very, very helpful. Um, and how this has shifted for me also is just reminding myself that we've said this before about kids and just about all people, is that all behavior stems from unmet needs.
Yes.
And so
Yep.
when you asked me about like, did you feel underappreciated? It's like, no, yeah, that would have felt amazing for somebody to be like, hey, Margot, you know what? We really appreciate you getting up here and leading the charge every
Right.
day. And that must take a lot of energy out of you during an already exhausting time of the year and job.
Right.
And so, but asking for that at the time just felt way too vulnerable for me.
Right.
Um, yeah. And so now it's like, if I don't like the way these behaviors, reactions, or words that I feel in my own mind or body are attacking me, I have something to do about it. I have
Yeah.
choice, I have agency. And yeah, I've considered myself to be an honest, open, loyal person to all the people that have come across my life. But there's a difference too between being open and honest with someone when, like, if say someone asks you for advice, right?
Mhm.
Or makes a request, and speaking truth about what you want or need, right?
Right.
It's much scarier to speak truth about what you want or need.
Yes.
And so it's become a very empowering thing to be vulnerable and to ask for help and to remind
Yes.
myself, you do not need to be in charge of everything all the
Yeah.
time or everything to everyone all the time.
Like what a weight lifted off. Like whew. Um, there's
Yeah.
something in your story that really like stuck out and it kind of like made me feel a little sad for a moment.
Mm.
And that was it was actually two parts. It's like first of all, how often do we just ignore the fact that we could easily just tell someone we appreciate them, right? It's not a
Mm.
big deal. We
Yeah.
see someone doing something, like anything, right? And we
Mhm.
could just say like I appreciate that. That's awesome. But the part that really kind of like just hit me in my heart a little bit is that you were sitting there angry and people knew it.
Yeah.
And in our society, or at least in what I see, is that it's easier to ignore someone when they're having an unpleasant emotional experience than to just check in with them and see how they're doing. Because
Right.
even if you weren't going to be vulnerable, if someone just said, hey, you look really upset, how can
Mhm.
I support you right now? Like, who knows what would have come from that moment? Just like
Yeah, it's
when
true.
we see people having a hard time, can we just say, like, I see you? I might not be able to fix it, but I see you. Can I
Right.
support you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I think some of it just had to do with the energy of the, the building and the end of the year stuff, and everyone just being on a level 10, right?
Yeah.
And everyone
Yeah.
dealing with their own stuff and not being able to communicate their needs either. Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
my level-headed brain years later is able to see that with a lot more
Yes.
clarity. But it was always a triggering story that stuck out to me. And thank you for reflecting that. And you're right. And this is something that I feel like you and I both do really well. And maybe it's because we felt their years had gone by without as much appreciation as we maybe wanted or desired or deserved,
Yeah.
frankly, in a variety of jobs and positions or with a variety of people in our lives. But I love the way you and I show up for each other in
Mm.
this way. And I
Yeah.
just hope for any warriors listening too, like, yeah, it can be really powerful and vulnerable to look at someone who's having a big feeling or a struggle that's very evident in their body and in their face.
Yeah.
Because we know that body language is a form of communication as well, right? It doesn't always have to be said with words for you to be able to get a sense of someone's emotional state.
Yeah.
And just to be able to know that it's an act of bravery for you to go over to that
Mhm.
person and ask them if they could use your support, and just
Yeah.
being grateful for each other when we show up, when we do great things, when we're kind, when we made each other laugh, when we wrote a great outline, or you enjoyed an Instagram post I made, because like we see each other. And I think that it's such a valuable part of any relationship, is not just being able to see, but being able to outwardly express in some
Right.
way, like, I see you, I hear you. So thank you for reflecting that back to me,
Yeah.
because I think
Yeah.
it's an important one for all us warriors to know.
We're not mind readers. None of us are, right?
I
Like,
wish.
I appreciate all you do for the pod, and I don't say it all the time, but I
Same.
say it enough,
You
like
do. I always feel appreciated. I
yeah,
always feel appreciated by you. And I hope you feel the same. Yeah.
I
It's not the
do.
kind of thing that we have to be like, I better text Abby today and remind her she's awesome. Otherwise, she's not going to think she's awesome. It's like, no, we
Where's
don't
my
need that.
text from Margot today?
Oh, now I feel like I have a new job, a new
Your new
role.
job, and I'll thank you for it.
As long as I get a thank you after I send you a funny GIF or meme. That's usually the way I communicate with
I
Abby via
love
text.
them. I love them. Yeah. Yeah. But
Yes.
that's, I mean, that's it. It's like, it's such a little thing, I'll just throw this out there as just a little thing. We could even pretend it's the win of the week. Um,
Look at that.
so, when the pandemic hit, like, I don't know, I wanted to like thank people that were delivering stuff to our house. And I had, I don't know, seen a post or seen a comment or something about people leaving water out. And so for the last year, I have a sign, and I just have like a big container that has, cardboard water bottles in them, and or at least like the not plastic water, whatever that is. And it's just like, thank you so much for delivering the package or delivering the food or whatever. If you're thirsty, please take water. And for me, when I see that people take water, it's a huge win. I'm like, yay, they were thirsty and they met their needs. Like,
Yes. No, it's so
yeah,
true. It's like small acts of kindness.
yes,
You don't know who needs it, who is having a rough moment and showed up to your door, and there's this beautiful note and this
it's not
something
so
to quench their
beautiful.
thirst. Well, a note
A note.
with kind words and sentiments.
Yeah.
And it is such a thankless job sometimes, being a delivery person, things that we take for granted so often. I
Mhm.
mean, if the pandemic taught us anything, was that we took so much normalcy for granted
Yeah.
in our interpersonal relationships, in our work environments, in our home environments. Yeah, and the services that people provide.
Mhm.
So totally, I think it's awesome that you leave people water.
Thanks. Yeah. But that's my way of showing appreciation. And I mean, the thing is, who knows how far it goes. So I guess
Right.
my thought is just, for all our listeners, like, what's a way you can communicate, if you're not feeling appreciated, a way to yourself or to someone else, but also, what is a way that you can communicate something you appreciate in others that someone else is doing, big or small.
Yes. Beauteous. Well, we hope that you will all take a moment to reflect on that, the kind of relationships that you want in your life, and how to
Mhm.
best communicate your needs with one another. Amazing.
Yeah.
Another episode wrapping up. We are so grateful that you are all here listening to us, with us. I genuinely feel that I'm not just here with Abby, but that I'm here with the wider swath of people and warriors
Yes.
out there on this journey. And so we just want to say we are continuously grateful. If you would love to be connected more, reach out at Anxiety Warriors Podcast on Instagram, or feel free to shoot us an email at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com, especially if you think you have a great topic idea, something that interests you that you'd like to hear us talk about. Or if you're interested in becoming a guest on the pod, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So, and as always, we will continue to ask, beg for an amazing 5-star review from you.
Please.
You, yes, I'm talking to you, whoever is hearing this right now.
Please.
We love your reviews. Send reviews. And it just means that more warriors around the world will be able to find us.
Yeah. So thank you so much, warriors. Thank you for going on this journey with us. We're so grateful you're here.
We love you. Till next time.